Hello dear viewers, I'm back as promised with my topic of principle and working of radionuclide generators in nuclear medicine. Now firstly, we'll see what is the ideal generator and its principles. The types of 99M technetium generators, which is the workhorse radionuclide, and how does its solvent extraction generator work? How does 99M technetium column generator work? Gallium generator working, and how does Rhenium 188 generator work? Now, what is the radionuclide generator? A unit that uses decay growth relationship between a long-lived parent radionuclide and its short-lived daughter radionuclide for the production of the latter. That means the daughter radionuclide. As I had told you, it is the cow for the nuclear medicine radiopharmacy because it is the basic ingredient which is required for the radiopharmaceutical preparation. This is the secondary mode of radionuclide production. Now, what are the characteristics of ideal radionuclide generator? Firstly, it produces the yield of high radiochemical and radionuclide purity. That means the chemical form in which the radioactivity, daughter radioactivity is present is in the acceptable form for the labeling and its chemical form. For example, the reduced hydrolyzed technetium is not the right form. It is pertechnetate in its +7 oxidation state. So the reduced hydrolyzed technetium becomes a radiochemical impurity, while radionuclide impurity is the parent radionuclide itself, which is present in the yield. As long as the parent radionuclide is in the generator, it is the very precious material, radioactive material, while if it gets inside the yield, that becomes an impurity. And it has to be safe and simple to operate this ideal generator, and so that the technical training required for the beginners is also minimal and it can be very easily learned. And the yield that is produced has to be sterile, without any microbial contamination, and pyrogen free. Pyrogen free means it should not have any substance which will increase the temperature of the patient's body. Because we have to use all this for intravenous injections, the yield has to be in this way, sterile and pyrogen free. Next, the yield has to be convenient for radiopharmaceutical preparation. The medium in which this yield has been obtained has to be having the pH, for example, optimum condition so that it is physiologically acceptable to, and for the labeling characteristics, you don't have to adjust the pH for the requirement of the further processing. It has to permit multiple separations so that the unappointed, the walk-in cases can also be accommodated for the day. And the daughter radionuclide should have less than 24 hours. If at all it is more than 24 hours, then better buy the daughter radionuclide instead of buying its parent. Now for the working principle. The separation of the daughter radionuclide from the mixture of the parent and the daughter radionuclide, preferably at equilibrium, to get maximum radionuclide of medical application. Now this is based on the difference between the parent and the daughter radionuclides with respect to their physico-chemical properties like solubility in particular solvent or affinity towards any adsorbent. Just like any two people are not same, they have different characteristics. For example, one person is more comfortable with in a particular workplace, and the other person can be not so comfortable in the same workplace. Similarly, the daughter radionuclide will want to go and get comfortable in another solvent. That is what it means. It's partition, or it does not. It prefers. Its preference is the other solvent, and for that matter, the parent radionuclide may not want to leave a place in which it's already there. And these are the two kinds of, you can say, analogies that I can explain to you to understand what it means by using the differences between the parent and the daughter radionuclide. This is a very important slide for the students, especially where it gives the daughter radionuclide its half-life, decay mode, and parents radionuclide half-life, and whether it is a secular or a long-lived generator, and what is the absorbent used and what is the eluent or the medium used in which the yield will be obtained. The medium or the eluent, specifically what it means. And here the second and third you can call as the ultra short-lived radionuclide generators, because the half-life of the daughter radionuclide is very less, and it's less than 10 minutes. And even barium 137M has the less than 10 minutes half-life, but this is not where you extract or use only barium 137M, because this is an experimental generator which I had explained in the last time, and it has to be eluted to understand and study, and it is not clinically used separately. Okay, and the last three generators are on which we are going to see in the next slides. Firstly, let us see molybdenum 99, technetium 99M generator, the workhorse generator also you can say, because the mostly used generator. And this is following the transient equilibrium, because the half-life is 10 times more. The parent is 66 hours, while technetium 99 is 6 hours GT. The equilibrium can be restored after 23 hours. Now here I've shown some images of the generators used, and in the next slides you'll understand which type of generator. To firstly, let us understand by this simulation of solvent extraction principle. Here I have used the liquid oil, it's oil, inside the syringe, in which some substance I've added and which is not going to get dissolved or mixed up in this oil. Okay, so now I'm using another phase, that is the aqueous phase, water, and then if we mix it, it looks somewhat like this. And however, after some particular time left to this immiscible, to both these immiscible liquids, then again, because of the immiscibility, they make two separate layers. Now, whatever is required is more in the one phase only, and that is considered as the phase which needs further processing, and it gets used for the production of the daughter radionuclide in our example. Now here I can explain in the statements that we have just seen can be put up in the form of statements. Firstly, it is based on the difference in the partition coefficients in the solvent. That is, the daughter radionuclide will go more into a particular phase than the other, and that will make it concentrated, or that will be the mode or principle of separation. The solubility of the daughter radionuclide is very high in the solvent. For technetium 99M generator, it is the methyl-ethyl ketone organic phase, which is immiscible with the aqueous phase water containing the mixture. And here it is the sodium molybdate in the aqueous phase, or you can say it is nothing but the in a polar or in an inorganic phase. Now, these both you can mix for some time, and that is physical mixing of the two immiscible liquids. And then when you leave it for separation, then these two liquids, because of their immiscibility, they will make two separate layers distinctly, and the parent radionuclide will be mostly in the aqueous form, inorganic form, and it is removed for the next phase, elution or solvent extraction, and the organic phase is collected for the further purification, evaporation of the organic phase, and sterilization, autoclaving or millipore filter. And here I have drawn this diagram out of my own work experience, because in the first 7 to 8 years of my work experience, this was the way in which I used to get the technetium 99M from the parent-daughter mixture. and that was called as the manual method of solvent extraction. Nowadays, the youngsters will not be aware of it unless and until it is the experimental study basis that this kind of solvent extraction method is still being taught, and because it's a very important way, it's a very basic and for the basic understanding of how a solvent extraction generator works. So, as an experiment, it is very important to understand these basics or fundamentals. While for me, my initial professional life, it was the way in which my patients used to get the technetium labeled radiopharmaceuticals. It was the cow that I used initially to milk the main ingredient of the radiopharmacy. And here I will try to show you the picture of the solvent extraction generator, which you saw in the initial slide, one of the initial slides. And here from the top, I used to add the organic phase, the methyl-ethyl ketone, and the parent radionuclide, the molybdenum 99N, used to be sucked from this tube, not handled, but it has to be sucked from this tube. And then for mixing for around 3 minutes, and then there was a stop cork, two-way stop cork in the two-way openings, in which one of the ways the parent radionuclide used to be collected after the standing and separation, proper separation. It used to be because it was all the lead shield, we could not see the actual separation, but from this lower layer, which used to be a little open, as you see here, we could see the where that even layer or where the level separates, where the two phases separate, that level could be seen at this lower level, which used to be outside the lead shield. And then the second opening used to be used for the collection of the yield, and that yield is still now in the organic phase, that is methyl-ethyl ketone. But before the evaporation step, there was a purification step where alumina was used to hold back the traces of moly, the aqueous layer, if at all added or got into the yield. So that used to get stuck in this alumina, and the yield used to come into this flask, which used to be transferred to be the beaker and evaporate the organic phase. And that beaker used to look almost empty with nothing, and with nothing I could see nothing as crystals or anything like that. But still, I knew that it has a radioactivity which we need as a yield. And then saline would be added to this beaker. This is called the leaching step, and from this now still is not usable form because it needed sterilization. It's all called as an open system, and this sterilization was initially in the autoclaving form, but because of so much of wastage of time, there was a new method developed, and that was of course it's not a new method, but it's an alternative which is much more advantageous from the time saving point of view, because radioactivity at every step getting lost, decayed, is also the very important change or advantage, that the millipore filter was taken over to sterilize the material that we had obtained from the leaching process. So all this is, as you can understand, the characteristics were very much away from the ideal. You needed process purification, you needed all these steps. It was not a very simple procedure. It needed a lot of technical training and open system, exposure of radioactivity, all these things, so not very safe. All these things finally led to the manual to automated generator shift. And I know, and even you all can appreciate how important and how advantageous development was this, where many things happened, save time, simple methods, the processing after obtaining the yield also was nil or negligible. So this was a very important or drastic development in our radiopharmacy that all of you, even me including me, have enjoyed the benefits of this transformation. It was, you can say, a metamorphosis for the best possible advantages. Now, what happened in the automated generator is very important, and to understand it is very interesting also. And now, for that also, I've taken some kind of simulation for the absorption column chromatography. This is what is the principle of the automated generator. Here, I have taken sand as the absorbent simulator, and here, if at all we have absorbed the parent radionuclide to this absorbent, okay, and then you pass a mobile phase. Absorbent is the stationary phase, and the mobile phase is saline. And here, just to know, just to get the idea, I've taken a colored liquid as usual, and then when this gets sucked with this liquid passes through this absorbent, and as it is sucked in, what is being sucked is the daughter radionuclide. And how do we suck this? Because this vial will have a negative pressure. It is also called as vacuum vial, so that the liquid gets sucked into this vial. Okay, and all being a closed system, this does not require any further processing, and this liquid has the daughter radionuclide and no parent radionuclide, because the affinity of the parent radionuclide to stay in the stationary phase is much more higher than the daughter radionuclide, and the affinity of the daughter radionuclide to get into this mobile phase, like get into the bus. Some of us will not want to go out of the house, like this Molybdenum 99 in this lockdown phase. By some of us will want to go leave, and when if there is a permission, the lockdown is out, people are allowed, then suddenly the buses will start, and these Technetium 99, how it has jumped into this liquid phase, it will be also like that person who wants to travel out, who wants to get into this mobile phase, and this kind of quality or property differences in the property of the parent and daughter has been used very well in the absorption column chromatography method for extracting or getting the daughter radionuclide. The cow, the milking process is possible because of this. So how it can be put in the statement form? It's actually chromatography, separation of the substances from a mixture on the basis of differences in their affinity towards mobile phase, liquid phase, passing through a stationary phase, usually the solid. Of course, here what is the absorbent phase? The alumina or molybdenum 99, it is a alumina column. The parent radionuclide is absorbed onto the surface of the solid stationary phase, which keeps on decaying to daughter radionuclide, maximum of the latter reaching at equilibrium. For a Technetium generator, this equilibrium time is 23 hours. The mobile phase carries this daughter radionuclide from the mixture due to its affinity out of the column, without disturbing the parent radionuclide, as the parent radionuclide's affinity to the stationary phase is much more, staying at home. Okay. Now, automated method of column generator, column chromatography generator. Here you can see two types of generator again. As I show the first one, this is actually the dry generator. The red one, this type of generator, where you have to introduce the saline and as a mobile phase. The saline, which is the mobile phase, has to be introduced, and that is why it is called as a dry generator. And this is a vacuum valve into which the yield is obtained. So all is such a closed system, and it is a very compact, user-friendly system, you can say. And this kind of generator actually ideal. It is very much near to ideal. You can call it as an ideal generator. Okay, and there is another generator, the blue here you can see. It is actually the wet generator, in which even the saline has been introduced already, and all that you can do is you can set up the volume. You have to do is you have to set up the uh, volume of the yield required, and then the vacuum vial has to be fixed into the another port with the port which has been left here, and it's very much by common sense also even the newcomer can get into it, but of course it's not very safe to directly leave a beginner to do this radioactive procedure, perform this radioactive, however simple it looks. Remember, it is very important, and so a basic level of simple training is still required for the beginner. And however simple it is, please understand the importance of each steps, and accordingly, the beginner has to work with it. So this saline is already inbuilt saline bag is there in the generator that makes the name, that gives the name of wet generator to this kind of column chromatograph generator. Now let us go to the gallium PET generator, gallium-68 PET generator. As I had told you, it is following the secular equilibrium because of such a long, so much difference between the half-lives. It is more than 100 times the daughter's radionuclide's half-life. Gallium-68 is 68 minutes half-life, while 68 germanium is 270 days half-life. Now here, if you understand, that is also because the daughter radionuclide that the production of the daughter radionuclide is so fast build up. The equilibrium conditions are built up very fast. That is 3 to 4 hours. And all this is also as per the algorithm which is available for the to get how much is this time required for the to restore the equilibrium. Now, how will we work with the gallium generator? How does it work inside? This yield is eluted in fractions. It is still not as old as the Technetium generator. Its utility value is still being in the very already clinically utilizable. It is still has to get so much established as the Molybdenum Technetium generator. It is still not a workhorse PET generator for certain reasons. Of course, with a lot of standardizations, it can achieve that state too. This is the initial fractions will have higher impurities, and the intermediate, mostly it is a fourth or fifth fraction, and all this has to be standardized once it is being set up in your department, and each generally is a 0.5 ml fraction, and the highest concentrations mostly obtain the fourth and fifth fraction. And then this will have more purity too, and it will not have the impurities like metallic impurities which are inbuilt in the absorbent or even the parent radionuclide or the daughter radionuclide. So these all have to be separated, and we should actually get the proper fractions for the later labeling. Now, it is very important to know that the metal chelates to take the precautions that these metal chelates do not enter the yield, and that is why the initial fractions have to be not used for the labeling. And that can interfere with the labeling because this gallium-68 labeling has the basic requirement of this metallic chelates possibility of along the impurities too, and this is what we don't want, and so that becomes the undesirable impurity which goes even inside the patient's body, and that will only increase the exposure to without getting any benefit. The pH adjustment also becomes important here because the eluent used is HCl, and the labeling needs an optimum pH. And all this again calls for a deviation, or it shows you that it is deviating from the ideal characteristics of a generator, where it says that the yield that is produced should be directly in the right form, convenient for the labeling. Now, the frequent addition is also required at least daily so that the zinc buildup will be reduced, or this zinc buildup can happen only when you allow the daughter radionuclide inside the generator, and that is how the daughter radionuclide, if it is inside the generator, it will be decaying into the granddaughter, which is a zinc. And so this has to not be built up. If you don't want them, then even if you don't have the cases, it is good that you remove this yield, or you keep eluting it daily. Now for the therapy purpose generator, that is tungsten rhenium generator. It is practically following the secular equilibrium because this is on the brim line of borderline of 100, almost 100 times more. The parent radionuclide's half-life is almost 100 times more than the daughter radionuclide. As you can see here, it is 69.4 days for tungsten, the parent radionuclide half-life, while the half-life of rhenium 188 is 17 hours, and the equilibrium restored restorage period is around 3 to 4 days. The half-life of rhenium 188 being so long. Now, how does rhenium 188 generator work? Even here, we have to go for fractional elution with the fractions of different volumes, as the intermediate fractions are purer and more concentrated, and the larger volumes can be eluted so that you can get more yield. However, it has to be it depends. The factors which govern such standardization is the volume or the concentration that you need for the patient case. And so if you need a very concentrated, you cannot go for larger volumes. So that is how you have to take care of the fractions also. And the elution profile of the generator in the initial stages will always help the standardization of this optimum fraction number. So this elution profile is not only for rhenium generator, but any new generator that comes up, gallium-68 generator also, which we have talked about. The elution profile has to be started for the first when you start with the working with the new generator. Now this elution profile is nothing but the graph of activity versus fraction number. Like for the first fraction, when you push into the generator, first fraction of the eluent, when you push it, and when you get that, when you get this first fraction in the next in your yield while that has to be measured as the activity. You can see here these are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 fractions in which you can see the third fraction is giving the maximum activity, radioactivity. So this is the one which will be having your yield, and you can use this as a yield. But the first and last will only dilute the total yield, and so you can use this fraction, and to standardize, to identify the fraction which is going to give you highest amount of yield, you have to draw this profile and then standardize the fraction number, which has to be used for later labeling. So now what is the summary of this presentation? Firstly, we saw the ideal generator characteristics. Then we saw solvent extraction method for the initial time 99 technetium generator, and then the chromatography, absorption chromatography as the ideal generator principle, ideal method in which you can generate the radionuclides of medical application, and the workhorse radionuclide generator using these two methods, and the gallium generator which uses column chromatography again, and rhenium generator also is a column chromatography. But here this is the single photon emission radionuclide, and this is the PET radionuclide, and this is the therapy radionuclide generators that we have talked about in this presentation. I have used the references of Textbook of Nuclear Medicine, Volume 1, Basic Science, John Habert and Antonia Darocha, and Physics in Nuclear Medicine, James A. Sorensen and Michael A. Phelps. Let me introduce my next topic of gallium chemistry and labeling, a deep dive, a very interesting topic, especially because gallium 68 is in the verge of becoming a workhorse radionuclide for PET radiopharmacy, and let us hope with all our established fundamental understanding of our fundamentals, we will go and make it the ideal one too. Now, let me request you to write your comments, your inquiry, or anything that you want to share with us at support@nuclearmedicinesolutions.in. Thank you.